But I love my time in the Bureau, but after 14 years of serving, I had a problem. And some people ask me sometimes, how did this get started? And I'll tell you this. I got on somebody's radar that I was not able to be controlled. And what I mean by that is, if somebody tells me to testify to something in federal court, my oath is to God. And so if they say, hey, I need an agent to testify at 2 o'clock, they observed this, and SWAT didn't get there till 3:30 or 4 o'clock, I tell the AUSA, I can't testify to that. I won't testify to that because I wasn't there.
Well, here's a better question. Why would the AUSA tell somebody, knowing that those timelines didn't align, to say something that isn't true?
Because like in every organization, the vast majority of the people that join that organization are squared away, hard-charging, good people, and they want to do things right. And there's a few that get through that don't care. And their only objective is to win at any cost. And that's what happened in my case. Was I had pissed an AUSA off because I told the truth under oath. And she got mad at me.
I believe that's how that's supposed to work.
It is. And here's the thing. I took an oath when I became an officer in the Army. I took the same oath as an agent. I took the same oath as an attorney. And at all three of those things, I said, I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help me God. My oath is not to the FBI, and it's not to the Army. It's to God. And I take that serious. And so when I would have somebody tell me, you're going to do this, I'd be like, I'm not.
How often would somebody come up and say something like that, though?
Not very frequently, but we had a unique thing happen. If a crime happens on an airplane inside the United States, it's automatically FBI jurisdiction because that plane has the capability of crossing state lines.
That makes sense.
So even if it's just in Texas, if it's going from San Antonio to Dallas and somebody commits a crime, because that is an aircraft, it's federal crime, it's FBI jurisdiction. And they're going to get arrested by the FBI and prosecuted by the FBI. Well, so after I came off narcotics, I went to Special Operations Group. SOG is a team of agents, and their job is to be covert, so you don't dress up like an agent. You don't go to the main office anymore. You go to a remote location, and your job is to conduct surveillance against targets for the FBI, whether it be somebody who's doing money laundering, or it could be a white-collar criminal, it could be a cartel member, it could be a politician, it could be anybody. If there's an open case, they call up SOG and they say, hey, I need to know who this person's meeting with, or hey, they're supposed to take a bribe today and I need you to get pictures of it. That's our job. So I'm working at SOG, and they decided, hey, you're a senior GS-13 at the time. We need to pull you off SOG and bring you to terrorism because we're getting ready to have headquarters come and inspect us. We don't have enough GS-13s on the terrorism squad. And I thought, okay, I've never worked terrorism. If they ask me any questions, I don't even know what to tell them because this isn't my violation. And they said, it doesn't matter. Just do this for inspection, and then we'll switch you back to SOG. I said, okay.
This sounds like the bureaucracy of the government I know and love.
Yeah, okay. So
now we're back on track with things I understand.
Yeah. And all of this you'll identify with because it's not universal to the FBI. It happens at DEA. It happens at...
What you're describing is a bureaucratic nightmare. Yeah, they're moving people around to make sure the spreadsheet looks good for the instant that they're inspected, and then they'll go back.
That's right.
As opposed to actually looking at the holistic health of the organization and fixing the problem. They'll fix it for a microsecond while it is being inspected and then go right back to the way it was.
So remind me of that because I'm going to tell you a SWAT story about that in a minute.
Okay.
But I go over to this squad, and they say, oh, because you're now in the office, you have to be the duty agent. And I was like, what's a duty agent? And they're like, well, that's the agent that at 12 o'clock midnight when we get a call at the Border Patrol checkpoint, maybe there's a shooting, or at the airport if somebody needs to be arrested, you have to respond out there. And I was like, oh, that sucks. So I have to do my normal work, and then I'm on duty all night? And they're like, yes. So I said, okay. This particular night, there was a call from the El Paso International Airport, and they said that a woman had assaulted somebody on a flight. One of the stewardesses got assaulted. So I call my partner, Jim Christensen, and I say, Jim, meet me out at the airport. We got to arrest a lady for assaulting a flight crew duty. I said, she's probably drunk. And he's like, I'll meet you there. So we both drive out to the airport. We get there. She's in custody in a cell. There's several people from the flight that need to be interviewed. And so the case is assigned to the VCMO squad. It's just the major crime squad. They also send agents out there. So they all show up, and I'm like, okay, look, this isn't my violation. What do you want me to do? And they're like, go interview Samantha Carrington, the lady, and find out what her story is. I said, roger that. So I go do that with Jim, and we go in and talk to her. And she's bawling her eyes out. And she's like, look, I didn't do anything wrong. I was like, and so I got close to her to see if I could smell alcohol. I don't smell any alcohol. So I'm like, usually there's alcohol involved. There's something going on.
There's a few G&Ts, a little sky-high G&T action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to her, and she says, look, I'm a professor at a college in California. I flew my mother out for cancer treatment, I think in Houston. Is MD Anderson Houston? I think it is.
I do not know. Yeah.
Okay, well, she flies her out there to MD Anderson for her cancer treatment. She said, and then I was flying back. I left my mom there. I was flying back so I could teach my class, and then I get arrested, and now I'm here with you, the FBI. And I said, well, tell me what happened. And she said, look, she said, I needed to take some medication. So I asked the flight attendant before we took off, excuse me, can I get some water so I take my medicine? And she said, ma'am, we don't serve drinks until we become airborne. So she's like, well, I just need some water to take some medicine. And she's like, well, then you'll have to wait until we're airborne. So she's like, okay. So she curls up in a blanket and she, tries to sleep. They get airborne. They come through, they serve drinks, and they think that she's asleep, so they don't serve her anything. And then she wakes up and says, hey, can I get some water? And it's a different flight attendant. And the flight attendant's like, sure. And so she gets the water. And she goes, hey, let me ask you a question. That a flight attendant right back there, what's her name? And she's like, why? And she says, because I'm going to write a complaint to Southwest Airlines for the way she treated me. I think that she was rude. And so the other thing you need to know is Miss Carrington is an Iranian, okay? Mm-hmm. She's an American citizen now, but she's of Iranian descent. So the flight attendant says, well, I'll do one better. I'll go get her, and you can talk to her directly. And she goes, no, I don't want to talk to her. I just want her name. So she goes back and gets her and comes up, and she's like, lady, what's your problem? She told me you want to file a complaint against me. And she's like, look, I just want your name so I can file a complaint. And the lady's like, you know what, lady? You're a freak, and I'm going to get you arrested.
Awesome. So
she goes and tells the captain that she's been assaulted. And so he diverts from going to California.
What?
Lands the plane in El Paso. She's immediately taken off the flight by the El Paso PD and put into a cage. And then they start bringing all the passengers off. Well, I just hear her side of the story, and I'm thinking, look, flight attendants don't call somebody a freak. That's the first thing that's glaring. The second thing is, I just don't believe your story. You're saying you never touched her? She goes, I never touched her. She said, in fact, I never raised my voice. I never used profanity. I was the one saying, please leave me alone. And she said, and got in my face and said, lady, you're a freak. So, and Michael can pull it up. You can Google Samantha Carrington, and you'll see that
Michael.
She sued. She sued Southwest Airlines.
I hope she won.
So I received a subpoena to go to her civil trial.
Did you talk to any of the other passengers?
Yes.
What did they?
I skipped over that. I apologize. So that night, I only heard her story. So I went out and I said, hey, what do I do now? And they're like, hey, take her, book her into county. We're going to finish up the interviews of the flight crew and everyone else. Tomorrow morning, we'll all get together. We'll figure out what the story is, and we'll write a criminal complaint. I go, roger that. So I drive her all the way to El Paso County Jail. She's crying the whole way. Mr. Shipley, Mr. John, please, I did not do anything wrong. I promise you. I've never been arrested before. This is going to be the end of my career. I'm a teacher. I can't, And I'm like, I've heard it 1,000 times. I book her into county jail. I go home. I get a good night's sleep. I wake up the next morning. I go into the office, and I get together and I say, okay, who did you interview and what'd they tell you? And I go around the room, and I get to an agent named Henry Kamansky, and Henry says, well, I interviewed the white guy that was in the aisle right across from where Miss Carrington was. And I said, okay, did he see anything? Yeah, he saw the whole thing, and he heard everything too. I said, okay, what'd he tell you? And he said, well, he told me that Miss Carrington actually asked the lady to leave her alone. So I was like, okay. And that Miss Carrington was not being profane, that she was being quite nice, And this lady was the one who got in her face and said, "Lady, you're a freak and you're going to jail." And I go, "Wait a second. What?" He said. I said, "Did they have time to talk?" No, the flight was diverted. She was taken off to a jail cell. He was brought out here. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, so they didn't have time to get their story straight. And he's saying the same thing she's saying. And now, then one of the questions I asked was, this flight attendant had bruising on her arm that was already dark. And I said, wait a second, I used to be an EMT, and a subcutaneous bleed takes a while to get that color. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen within 30 minutes of the flight.
Oh, God, no. It's a couple days later.
So my assumption was those were previous existing, whether from a domestic dispute or falling down drunk, I don't know, but it didn't happen on that flight. And I did not believe that flight attendant. So after all that's over, I went to I went to my supervisor and I said, "Hey, sir, I got to write this criminal complaint, but there's additional information that I just found out that if I put it in this complaint, I don't think we have probable cause to keep her, and she needs to be released." And he said, "John, you're not a judge. You don't wear a black robe. You write what I tell you to write, and then you go swear to it, and you let the system figure this out."
Oh, nobody wants to hear that.
So I was like, he said, "John, we both served in the military before we came to the FBI. You know how I follow orders?" I said, "Yes, sir. I follow lawful orders." He goes, "I'm telling you, you don't want to do anything other than write what I tell you to write and take this over there." He goes, "This is after 9/11. She's Iranian. Are you catching this?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." So he's like, "Go back to your desk, write the criminal complaint, leave out these parts." So I did. I wrote it up. I took it down to Judge Garney. His name's Norbert Garney, and he was an AUSA before he became a magistrate judge. And I'm sitting outside of his office, and I am going to puke. I just know I'm going to throw up. And I looked at his secretary, and I said, "Ma'am, do you have a trash can I can throw up in?" And she's like, "You're going to throw up?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I am." She's like, yes. And she gives me a trash can. She goes, "Are you sick?" And I said, "No, I just, something's wrong." And she's like, "Do I need to call 911? I'm like, "No." I said, "Could I actually talk to Judge Garney in his chambers?" And she's like, "Yeah, I guess so." She's like, "Don't throw up in his office." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." So I go inside, and when I walk in, he's like, "Hey, John," because he knew me when I was an agent. He was an AUSA. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, sir, I'm not." He said, "You're really pale and you're sweating." I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "I have a problem and I don't know what to do." And he said, "Well, what you should do is tell me your problem." I said, "Okay, sir." I said, "I have a supervisor at the FBI and I have an assistant United States attorney that are telling me to omit things from a criminal complaint because if I put those things in there, it makes her sound innocent. But if I write it this way, it makes her sound guilty." I said, "But I know that this is true, so I think it should be in that criminal complaint." So I told him everything. And he said, "Do you want me to fix this?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He goes, "Okay." And he picks up the phone and he calls the AUSA. And he says, "Hey, this is Judge Garney. Tell me why Agent Shipley is sitting here in my chambers telling me this lady's innocent, and yet you're authorizing prosecution." Now, that prosecutor is the same prosecutor that started going after me and making it her life's ambition to destroy me because I went against her. I did something. I went above her head to a judge and made her look bad. So the judge writes a writ, says, "Go get Miss Carrington out of the jail and take her to the airport and get her on a flight." I said, "Yes, sir." So I walked into the jail. Samantha was there. Her eyes, she looked horrible. She'd been crying all night. And I felt horrible because I had arrested an innocent person. And so I walked in, and she's like, "John, please, you have to believe me. I did." I said, "Hey, Samantha, right now I need you to just be quiet and listen to me. You're going home." She's like, "What?" I said, "I went and I talked to the judge. All the charges are dropped. I'm taking you to the airport, but right now you're still a prisoner. So until they get you your clothes back and we're walking out the door, you need to just follow orders from these guards." So they had a female guard take her, and they got her dressed and everything. Well, she came out and she said to me, I'll never forget this. She said, "John, I gave up on God last night. In that cell, I said, 'God, why do you forsake me? Because I didn't do this, and yet I'm going to have a black mark on my record for the rest of my life from the FBI arresting me for something I didn't do.'" And she's like, "I gave up on him. And she said, "You're my angel. You came and saved me." And I said, "No, I'm just an FBI agent doing my job." I said, "This isn't about you. It's about me and about the oath that I took. I'm not going to arrest innocent people. I don't need to. There's enough bad people out there. We don't have to create criminals." Mm-hmm. And I got her out of there, and I took her. Well, then she filed a lawsuit against Southwest Airlines. Enrique Moreno was her attorney. He's passed away now. But now the building in downtown El Paso, the courthouse, is the Enrique Moreno building, named after him. Great attorney. He went to Harvard, and very, very nice guy. So he subpoenas me to come to her trial. Now the Bureau's getting mad at me. Now that AUSA is pissed off at me, and they're like, "You can't testify." I said, you want me to not show up when I'm subpoenaed? I'm going to get arrested. So the Bureau comes in, and they have the Chiefs Division Counsel look at it, and they're like, "No, he has to testify. I mean, he has to." So, they warned me about, you better be careful what you say. If you say anything that makes the Bureau look bad, we're going to come after you. You're going to lose your job. OPR, Officer Professional Responsibility.
They were that clear with it and that direct with it?
Oh, yes. They were clear. They were like, "Look, you better be careful." And I just said, "Look, I'm going to go and testify to the truth, and I'm going to testify to what's in my FD 302s, the reports that we write in the FBI." I said, "That's all I'm going to do." And they're like, "You deviate this much, you're going to be in a world of trouble." So we go to trial. I testify. I leave. I don't think anything about it. Samantha Carrington wins, I think, $27.8 million. Now, that I don't know if she got 27.8. I don't know if they settled for less or whatever else.
Bet she's not,
27.5.
But she's not flying Southwest.
I bet she's not. But Samantha Carrington won that money, and what she did was she called me up and she said, "John, I don't need this money. You do. And I want to give it to you."
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
And I said, "I can't accept it." And she's like, "Why not?" And I said, "I don't know why I can't, but it just doesn't feel right, and I don't want to, and I will not accept that money." And she said, "Well, what do you want me to do with it?" Well, my best friend Joe Del Vento, that was a sniper on the SWAT team, had just died of cancer. He was 42 when he passed away. Total stud, former Navy guy, loved Joe Del Vento. My son is named Joseph after Joe Del Vento. Joe had passed away, her mom had passed away, so I said, "Donate to the Cancer Society. Do something good with it." Well, thank God I went in and I talked to the Chief Division Counsel, and I reported that she offered me that money and I didn't accept it. Because that Assistant United States Attorney, the first thing she did was she started a case against me, and I didn't know it, for accepting a bribe of $27.8 million. So
what was the punishment for that AUSA when? So she was on the receiving end of the call. Is that like an ass chewing?
Just an ass chewing.
Okay. So you professionally embarrassed her. Yeah. It wasn't as if she was removed from her position.
No.
Okay.
No. That didn't happen until just a couple of years ago. She's been demoted and moved and stuff. She's had some problems because she broke the law in several cases. And
people are not going to want to hear that the institutions that are supposed to exist to enforce the law are the ones behind the scenes bending and breaking it.
Well,
these badges are supposed to mean something.
They're going to hear it because that's what my case is about. And you'll see that in just a second. So she came after me for accepting bribes. And after they went through all my finances and they looked at our tax returns and they looked at everything, they're like, "Yeah, this guy doesn't have any money. His wife makes this amount, he makes this amount." And at this point, I don't know if we had adopted our 2 kids, because we adopted 2 kids at birth, and that was super expensive. But so she went after me for accepting a bribe. And once that didn't happen, then she said, "Well, you made false statements at the trial." And so the Office of Inspector General, there was a guy that worked there named Eric Ben, and he cannot investigate his way out of a paper sack, but he was playing good cop, bad cop with me, with his boss from Dallas. They bring me in, and they're like, "You're going down for this," and I'm like, "Which one of you is a good cop?" In the it was a joke. You're an FBI. It'd be like if I said to you, "Hey, you know what? You and I are going to have a push-up contest." Andy's a Navy SEAL.
I would just say no. I choose not to participate.
Somebody that doesn't know jiu-jitsu says, "Hey, I want to roll with you."
Actually, I would say, Michael, I think I would say no to that too, wouldn't you? The reality is,
I'd love to see it if you said yes.
well, the reality is this, though. You're way more likely to get hurt with somebody who's unpredictable like that.
Very true.
Because they're going to, like, I have jiu-jitsu answers to jiu-jitsu problems.
Yeah.
Somebody freaking out on the street is like, whoa, dude, that's not the right way to move. You're not supposed to move like that. That's not how you get out of that. You get elbowed in the head by accident.
Yeah. Well, it was crazy. This agent brings me in and he, you did this and you did that. And I was like, no, I didn't.
This is like a bad sitcom. But usually, though, it's two cops and somebody who's not a cop that are playing this game. But you're just talking about a room full of federal agents trying to see who has the bigger dick.
And see, that's what got me, because I'm sitting there looking at this guy thinking, are you kidding me, dude? Like I haven't been an agent for the last 8 years.
Do you guys all pull your badges out and put it out? I assume all FBI guys have it.
No,
and it's like first move is just like boom, and so like, oh, I got a badge too.
No, the interesting thing was when they brought me in, they called me and they said, look, you have to report over to OIG to be interviewed by Agent Ben. I said, okay, roger that. No problem. They're like, okay, you're not allowed to take your weapon with you. I was like, what? They're like, yeah, you can't take your weapon with you. Don't take an ass baton. Don't take pepper spray or anything like that. I was like, what do you think I'm going to do? Draw my weapon against another federal agent? But anyway, so I go over there. I get interviewed. They tell me you're likely going to be fired for lack of candor. That's their big thing in the Bureau.
Is that a fireable offense?
It is.
Lack of candor.
Mm-hmm.